Hi, my name's Jonathan Black. A lot of the work that I tend to do and have done over the years revolves around helping people manage and undertake what we call robust or critical conversations, a lot more easier than they tend to do in the past. Now, there's a lot of material out there around how to construct a conversation, how it takes place, but there's not a lot out there around how we actually prepare ourselves for having those difficult encounters, be it at work, for example, around a disciplinary dispute, a performance management conversation, even at home with a conversation with our partner. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I developed a mnemonic I call Strobe, S-T-R-O-B-E, which is a step-by-step process whereby people can, very simply, over 10 or 15 minutes, engage in a series of questions that enables them to be more confident and more able to undertake some of those hard conversations they have to take, whether they be at work or at home. Usually at work, but quite applicable to home as well. And I've covered this in one of my recent books, but I think I keep getting asked questions about what Strobe actually is, and so I thought a YouTube video would be quite appropriate. Strobe, as I said before, is a step-by-step process. It's a series of questions whereby we can sit down for 10 to 15 minutes and prepare what we're going to say and some of the things that may eventuate that we know we're going to struggle with in that conversation. So the S in Strobe, for example, stands for self, and that's about how we behaviourally and emotionally prepare ourselves for that particular encounter. By behaviourally, I mean how we actually control our body language. When we walk into a meeting with somebody, when we walk into a conversation, people are not listening to what we say. They are to a certain degree listening to how we say it, but they're more watching what we actually do. And often we may come and we may not be confident. That comes across in our body language. We may not be confident and we try and be too assertive and too firm, and so we engage in behaviours to try and control the environment that shows that we're in charge, but actually puts the other person on the back foot, or the other people in the room on the back foot as well. Emotionally is about how we actually control our internal emotions. The people that we're dealing with at times can be very aggressive. They can be quite hostile. They can be quite sad. They can be quite, or very much in a victim kind of mode. And that's about how we emotionally can withstand the emotion, be it positive or negative, hot or cold, that comes across us in that particular encounter. So some questions in the self part of Strobe, for example, might include, what do I think about this person, both positively and negatively? How can I accentuate the positive aspects of this? And how can I look at, with honesty, the negative parts of what I think about this person and put them in a box so it doesn't actually interfere with the body language I come across? What emotional state am I in? What skills do I need to expand on? What information do I need that means I'm more prepared? So these are some simple examples about how we can prepare ourselves. The T in Strobe stands for timing, and this step is really around courage. It's really the courage of asking ourselves and be prepared to justify to others why we're having this conversation here and now. If someone, for example, has been engaging in an activity in the last 6 months, then why are we simply raising it now? So the timing question is, why now? Why not later on? What are going to be the implications if I leave it for another day? What are the consequences of addressing it today? Typically, I find that it's very, very easy to come up with reasons why we delay having a conversation. But when we go through the process of justifying why we're having that conversation today, it often acts like an armour and gives us confidence that yes, I'm choosing this battle, I'm choosing this conversation because it's the best thing to do, and I've got the process of justifying it to myself. And that gives us courage to act. The R in Strobe stands for resistance, and that is what are the anticipated comebacks, questions, challenges that we are going to have from the individual or the group that actually will get in their way of being able to achieve what we want to achieve in that conversation. Often I find that within any conversation you've got probably half a dozen key, that's not half a dozen, that's a handful of 5, but half a dozen or a handful of key questions, key kind of points of resistance that we can tee out the derivatives of further questions as a result of those. And often they're very predictable. And often we go into these conversations without giving any kind of thought as to how we're going to respond to them. And yet when we simply write down on a piece of paper what might the comebacks be, what might be the excuses, what might be the challenges, what might be the hostile and aggressive kind of responses or questions that we get, It gives us a lot of confidence when we've given some pre-thinking to that, which means that our response is considered, it's calm, and to a certain degree it kind of hits a nail on the head in terms of how you want to respond to some of these very predictable points of resistance. The O in Strobe stands for objectives. What exactly are our objectives going into that conversation? And this is one that I often find, particularly at work, doesn't get a lot of attention, because often we're talking to somebody because somebody else has required us to speak with them. Maybe it's been our manager or our boss, maybe a staff member has said you're ready to talk to somebody about this particular issue, but we haven't actually got any clear objectives other than to have the conversation. Maybe our objective is simply to get out of that engagement with a pulse. I don't know. Maybe it's to deliver certain information. Maybe it's to get an answer to certain questions. But if we're going to go into an encounter that's that kind of emotionally engaging and emotionally draining, then we've got every right and we deserve to be able to look back on that encounter and ask ourselves, did we achieve what we set out to achieve? So what exactly are our objectives in the first place? The B in Strobe stands for boundaries. And boundaries are about what's your job, what's my job, what are our expectations, what are our assumptions. Boundaries are about looking at a situation, looking at an encounter and not being pushed or pressured into giving a promise or an obligation or a responsibility that actually is not warranted. It's about understanding in terms of boundaries that this is my job as your boss or your partner or your friend or your colleague. This is my role. What is your role in this particular encounter? That's what boundaries is about. And the boundaries component is in there because very often I find that clients of mine come out of these encounters feeling like they have obligated themselves to things that actually weren't actually part of what they actually should be doing, and often they don't have the authority or the skill or the knowledge to actually undertake what they've actually promised to do. The E in Strobe, the last part of Strobe, stands for evaluation. And this is about, hold on, how did I go here? And there are some key questions there, and the key questions are, did I achieve my objectives? Are the objectives that I didn't achieve, then how am I going to continue to achieve them? What did I promise to do? What did this person promise to do? What do I need to follow up on? What have I learned about myself from that encounter? What skills do I need to develop from that encounter? What did I do really, really well? That's the evaluation component. So in a nutshell, that's Strobe. Hope it's useful and worthwhile, and thanks for watching.